Yo, what's good, everybody? CTC Radio, the only radio station committed to the coast. My name is the Holy Lord Sanctus, aka Harold Brown, and I am here with the legendary Mike Kurtz from Mike's Hot Honey. I'm really in awe right now because you guys have to understand, like, this is a product that I use on a daily basis. If you're on my stories at all and you see me cook, which is rare, if I'm cooking waffles and pancakes, and Mike's Hot Honey is Mando for every single meal. And I'm just really excited to get to talk to you and have you here, man. So I really appreciate you coming through.
Well, thank you for having me, Harold.
Absolutely. So let's get it started. Let's kick it off the top. Yesterday, man, I saw you with the Mike's Hot Honey starter jacket, fire, burgundy jacket. I rolled up on you and was like, yo, where did you get this from? Where did you get this? Because this is like my favorite product in the world. And he said, oh, I'm Mike. And it just dawned on me that I had never imagined what Mike might look like or what Mike might be about. And just instantly being in your presence, I was overwhelmed by hip hop culture, you know what I'm saying? Hip hop energy and just that kind of energy, which made me love the product even more. So let's dive into where that comes from, where your inspiration comes from, not only for the product, but for your style and everything, because I feel like it's a whole, your aesthetic is part of the product as well, which comes through.
Yeah, I mean, well, my family, they're musicians. So my grandparents met singing in Atlantic City in a nightclub together. My grandfather was the MC for like 30 years at the Latin Casino, which was a supper club in Philadelphia, and then later moved to Jersey. My dad's a jazz saxophonist, so my uncle's a drummer. I play piano. I like to sing.
Just a talented family. I love that.
One side of the family, very musically talented, my dad's side. But yeah, that's where the music thing came from originally. And, grew up in the 90s. Always, got to see a lot of great hip-hop acts growing up. I grew up in Amherst, Mass. It's a college town. It's, pretty small town, but because of the universities there, we had a lot of music come through, so I got to see a lot of great artists growing up. And yeah, I mean, the inspiration for the product comes from Brazil, where my parents met originally in the 1960s, and I lived there when I was a junior in college. I studied in Bahia, northeastern Brazil, and on a weekend trip to a small town, I found a pizzeria that had jars of honey with chili peppers for drizzling on the pizza. So that's where the inspiration for the product came from.
Okay.
And I started experimenting with honey chili pepper infusions in my college apartment 20 years ago.
Wow.
And then I moved to New York. I grew up a couple hours north of the city and moved to New York. Started a career in the music business. I caught the very tail end of the golden age of the music business, with people still buying CDs.
Okay.
If your listeners know what that is.
Right.
And, caught the tail end of that. And I think part of the music business teaches you, like, you really got to hustle. And so I try to carry that over into the honey business. To work in music, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort. You got to stay outside, you got to network, you got to meet people, you got to be willing to put yourself out there. And so I've tried to transfer that sort of mentality to what I do in the food business. And quite honestly, I'm grateful to be selling something that can't be downloaded from the internet for free.
Right.
That is like a true commodity.
100%.
It's difficult to quantify the value of music these days.
It's only intrinsic.
It's
really.
an abstract thing.
Yeah.
Like a commodity like honey is a little bit different, but yeah. For me, hip hop is a big part of my life. Growing up in the '90s, I got to see De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. I got to see The Roots, Wu-Tang, Smith and Wesson, Helter Skelter. Like a lot of great artists from that era, and so I always hold on to that.
I love that. I mean, and your career sounds so dynamic that we can go so many different directions. But I definitely want to understand more, like, when you saw the hot honey chili in Brazil, were you already making your own condiments, your own products, or like what was the spark that said, hey, I can do this, I want to play around with this?
No, so my friend's family growing up owned a pizzeria, and so I was always into pizza, and I was always into spicy food, so I tasted the combination of chili peppers and honey on pizza, and it just kind of blew my mind. I had never tasted anything quite like it. Chili peppers and honey are two of nature's most magical things. I mean, they're very unique, and the combination of the two was very dynamic for me. And then in combination with pizza, the savory notes of pizza was like the perfect pairing. So I just couldn't shake the feeling about that, and it just started experimenting with honey chili pepper infusions because I wanted my friends and family to be able to experience that without having to go all the way to Brazil.
Wow.
And it's not a Brazilian thing. It's not something you would find in Brazil commonly. The man that owned the pizzeria where this all started is Swiss, actually. So it's really not like a thing you would commonly see in Brazil. It's just kind of like an anomaly.
I love the fact that you took your experience and figured out how to share that in a way that was meaningful to you with the people that you love. I think that's something huge. There's something huge there. But I also think that what stands out to me is that you're an outlier, right? And like, so as an outlier, it comes with, when you're the first to do something, there's no playbook, is basically what I'm saying. And so how have you been received as a hip-hop, a cultural figure in a non-traditionally, like in a space that's definitely non-traditionally not hip-hop, you know what I'm saying? It's traditionally
Right.
not hip-hop is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, the honey owl's it's been pretty sleepy for the last 50 years.
Facts,
It
true.
really just hasn't had much innovation.
Right.
You know, and that was a fortuitous thing for us because, you know, as a brand, we sort of saw that, hey, we could bring something new to a space that's really just been stagnant for a long time. And honey buyers noticed that, like, we create incremental revenue for the set. So if you have 50 pure honeys on the shelf, you pull one off the shelf, you replace it with our product, all of a sudden you're bringing in buyers from the hot sauce segment, the condiment segment.
Wow.
It's incremental revenue. So the buyers that understand that will give us shelf space. And so we're really all about storytelling with our product, and that's part of, like, you know, that's why we do the starter jacket. That's why I'm carrying this briefcase right here. That's why we did a pair of Ewing athletic sneakers. It's part of the reason for all of our collaborations. It's a try to continue telling the story, and our product is collaborative by nature. You know, it's a condiment. You're not going to eat it pure. It needs a vehicle. It needs a partner. It needs a collaborator. So, you know, that the nature of the product, I think, extends to the brand and how we move as a team. And yeah, being a New York brand. I mean, this year hip hop, we celebrated 50 years of hip hop in New York, globally, and just being a New York brand. I mean, you live in New York long enough, it just sort of becomes part of your life. You know, it's like you end up meeting these people who were foundational to that movement, whether they were graffiti artists or you know, MCs or breakdancers or DJs, and start to learn more about hip hop culture and what that's meant for New York City, and you just kind of live that experience being in New York. And I first started making the honey when I was really starting out. I lived in Long Island City in Queens, and I was like 2 blocks from Queensbridge, where Nas and Mobb Deep came out of, and Marley Marl, and a lot of great artists. And I also lived like a couple blocks from 5 Points, which was like kind of the epicenter of graffiti in New York City. It was a warehouse that was just covered in graffiti.
Okay.
Unfortunately, now it's been knocked down and turned into a luxury condo. But for many years, it was a place where graffiti artists would come really from all over the world to contribute their art. And so I was like, you know, I lived like kind of in the center of it. I actually met Marley Marl really early on when I was first starting. I used to push a laundry cart down the block to the post office to ship my honey shipments out. And he lived like right around the corner from me. He had a little studio there.
That's crazy.
And I met him early on, and his son Marlon is also a neighbor of ours and done a lot of events with him. But yeah, hip hop culture, obviously, like big part of New York, and honestly, like big part of Sao Paulo as well. We're here in the Casa Sao Paulo, and a lot of my connections to Brazil are through the hip hop scene in Brazil, and now we're getting ready to launch the brand over there. So we've got a lot of different things going on.
I love that. Can you tell me like what the difference is from your perspective between hip hop in America versus hip hop in Brazil?
Yeah, I think in Brazil, I would say hip hop continues to be something that is very tied to the Black consciousness movement and tied to political movements. I think more so than hip hop in the States. No, that's such a very broad statement because obviously there's such a huge range of artists covering a wide range of topics. But just to generalize, like
Right.
I do think like when hip hop was developing in Brazil, it was tied to the Movimento Negro, which was the Black consciousness movement in Brazil, which was looking to consolidate power. At the time and still today, you look at the parliament in Brazil, it's mostly white people. You look on TV, it's mostly white people. And you look at the public, you have all these people who are black but don't identify as black because the one drop rule, as it applies in the States, really is only more recently being adopted in Brazil. So this idea that like, people who used to identify as like some range of color are now identifying as negro. And by doing that, they're growing their political power. And hip-hop music really, I think, was a big part of that in Brazil in terms of bringing awareness to that idea. You got Racionais MCs. They're still, the biggest foundational group in Brazilian hip-hop music, still making new music today, still touring, just did a tour in the States a couple of years ago. And you got newer artists like Emicida, who continue to carry the torch for that movement. And I think American hip-hop music has, through commercialization, maybe become, I don't want to say it's lost its way, because
Why not?
I'm old and like, what I remember, I know we have to evolve, and I know that like what young kids today see is different than my own personal vision, but like, it's just different. I think it's like, yeah, I don't know, the commercialization of it has really
100%.
sort of changed.
This is a conversation that I have all the time, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think you touched on a good point, which is maybe it's not the music and maybe it's not the culture of hip hop,
Yeah.
but I do think that like the way analytics has come to the forefront of everything has maybe affected hip hop the most, I feel like, because maybe that's what I pay attention to the most. But when the goal transitions from just doing dope art and hoping that dope art brings you attention to attention being the goal, then people will do anything for that attention, and that kind of leaves us in the space that we're at now.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, I feel comfortable saying that in that sense, hip hop has lost its way. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame it on the genre. I'd blame it on, I guess, consumer behavior maybe. But
Outside forces that drive consumer behavior.
100%.
And yeah.
so how are you avoiding that same thing happening with Mike's Hot Honey?
It's tough. I think like there's a lot of pressure to grow. And you're in the CPG business, you're constantly faced with pressure from investors, from your own internal team to grow the business. This idea that like businesses have to grow,
Right.
which is like,
Got to make money. That's
yeah, it's like we can't just grow naturally. We gotta hyper growth is like this thing. And I try to not let that really be the primary driver of how I operate. Our brand is really focused on meeting people in person, so we do a lot of in-person events. Ideally, we want people to taste the product. Like, we want to get it in people's mouths. So like, you can't really do that digitally. Like, you can reach people digitally. They can see the brand, and a lot of people see cooking videos online, and that's of course become such a huge thing on TikTok and Instagram. But like, there's something different when you actually meet people in person. So we spend a lot of our time connecting with people, making genuine connections with people in person, and I think those connections go a long way. And then we also try to carry this thing that like honey is an ancient gift. That goes back to like caveman times. Like this is like people have been gifting each other honey since the beginning of humanity. So the idea of honey as a gift is a powerful thing, and that whenever you have an idea that's that old, that's permeated like civilizations for that long, it's whether we recognize it or not on the surface, it's like it's within our consciousness. And so we try to operate in like a generous way with our product, where like we know that if we gift people bottles, it's gonna come back. And so like we gift a lot of product. I think like I forget what the number was, but like our CEO Matt told me, he was like, we're something like 20 or 30% above like what typical brands do in terms of their gifting budget versus revenue. And I was like, that for me, that's like a badge of honor. Like I take a lot of pride in that. And we know that like a bottle that goes into somebody's home becomes a foot soldier for the brand.
Fact.
And they expose all their friends and family and their network to it. And that just, it just grows that way. So like not all products are like that. We know that our product happens to be that way because it's like a novel thing that a lot of people have never experienced, and people like to share it. So
that's 100% true. I was actually gifted my first bottle of Mike's Hot Honey, and I made sure that I bought my parents a package so they could try. And I kept telling them like, you have to try this, you have to try this, until I was just like, I bought it for you, try it.
Yeah.
Try it.
How many people have you put on? I mean, it's like, that's really like the story of the brand. There's some products that are great, but for whatever reason, people don't necessarily like talking about it or sharing them. They're still great products, but they're either not novel, or there's something about it that people just don't share it. For whatever reason, people happen to like talking about our product or sharing it. So like it just sort of like grows organically that way.
But it's also, when you think about it, it's like the most hip hop thing in the world, right? Like a lot of production in hip hop is where you sample one thing and make it a totally new thing. And I feel like you sampled spice in a way that's made it a totally new thing in combination with the honey. But what is a meal or a combination with the Mike's Hot Honey the most unique one that you had? I know we have pizza, wings. What's the most unique combination?
Oh man, I mean,
that was good, that you liked?
Yeah, I think one thing that's very unique that most people have never tried is drizzling Mike's Hot Honey on ice cream. It's a flavor profile that people just haven't experienced, because you've almost never seen heat with ice cream.
True.
But you can drizzle it on like vanilla ice cream with candy pecans or butter pecan ice cream, and it's great.
Fire.
We actually just had a partnership with Cold Stone Creamery. There's 900 locations.
Yo, check
nationwide.
This out. So CTC Radio, this is based in the 805 in San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
The first Cold Stone Creamery was started in San Luis Obispo.
No kidding.
So the hometown, this is a hometown combo right here.
Okay. Yeah, they did a whole flavor with the product, and they exposed a lot of people to that concept that had never tried it before. So that's pretty unique. You see people using it in cocktails in really creative ways. I mean, I've seen it on all sorts of things. Like I've had it on scorpion before, which is crazy.
That's wild.
I know a man who's involved in the edible insect space.
Okay.
And I was unfortunately subjected to having to try that at one point. But yeah, there's a lot of things, and the sampling thing is funny. I haven't produced anything in a long time, but I used to be a hip hop producer.
Okay.
And I recorded a lot of music between 2000 and 2010. I was active, and produced a lot of music with different artists in New York, and it's something I'm trying to get back to.
What were you cooking on, hardware or software?
It was a mix. I mean, I have a Wurlitzer 200A piano,
okay.
so I would record stuff on the Wurlitzer and port it in. I used to use Reason and Ableton Live.
Propeller head over here.
You're a propeller head. Yeah. That's where I started. Actually, I started in Reason, and kind of just like, I had a bunch of synthesizers, MIDI synths, but I'd also incorporate different hand percussion. I had a lot of percussion instruments from Brazil, so I try to incorporate a mix of live instruments and synthesizers and drum machines and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna keep you out here too much longer because the sun is coming down. What's next for Mike's Hot Honey?
Yeah, so we have a lot of like collaborative CPG products coming out. We launched a potato chip with Utz, which is Mike's Hot Honey flavored potato chip that's out in the market now. They just dropped pretzels. We've got
Nationwide or specific markets?
They're distributed nationwide, but mostly like east of the Mississippi. So
Okay.
they're more on the East Coast. But we've got some other collaborative CPG products that I can't say yet, but that you'll start to see on the shelves in different aisles of the supermarket in the coming months. We've got a collaboration with a very big chain, restaurant chain that's dropping this summer that will probably be impossible to miss when it comes out.
I love that.
And tomorrow we're dropping our first video game, which I'm very excited for. It's called Slice Hunter. It's a nostalgic pizza-themed arcade game, inspired by the arcade games of like the 80s and 90s that you might find in your childhood pizzeria in the corner, like Miss Pac-Man, Galaga. And the original arcade cabinet is at Scar's Pizza on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, but it'll be available for download in the App Store. It's called Slice Hunter.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's fire. I love that. Will there ever be a Mike's Hot Honey mixtape of some sorts?
You know, it's funny. We work with a lot of DJs. In fact, a really good friend of mine is who we work with is DJing in this very room today at 5 p.m. DJ Niaki from Sao Paulo. But what we want to do is commission our DJ friends to create mixtapes, and we're going to do a bunch of like original Mike's Hot Honey audio drops that they can plug into the mixes, so that when we're having our own parties, when we're doing events, we could just play, the DJ Wolf mix or the Nicky Antics mix or, the De La Ceiba mix, and just plug it in. And I think through the DJ community, we've really grown our brand, especially in New York. We do so many events where we incorporate DJs, where we sponsor the DJ, and the DJ brings their own community.
Right.
Once you tap into the DJ's community, then you're reaching all these new people. So that's been actually like a huge part of how we've grown the brand just on the ground in New York.
I love that. If you need West Coast ambassadors, we got all the artists, we got all the DJs and producers, so let me know, because that's something that I would love to talk about off camera, because it just makes too much sense. Your product makes too much sense, but we can talk about that off camera. Lastly, I have to ask you about this briefcase. Have to ask what it is. Can we point it at the camera? And we're
2024, reflexo do lançamento do anúncio do lançamento
almost. We're almost. This is the last thing we're doing. We're almost done. This is the last thing.
So there we go.
Yes.
This is
break it down for us. What are we looking at?
this is a Franz and Presto Lock case. This is the same model briefcase that was in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
So you thought it might have been Marcellus Wallace's soul, but it was actually Mike's Hot Honey in the case. And I carry this around with me everywhere I go, and it's just a fun little elephant to have. When you're selling a product, it's important to have an elephant to entertain people.
Factual.
And that goes back to the Ringling Brothers from old New York days. Like you gotta have an elephant. You gotta have something that entertains. Otherwise, the sales pitch gets a little dry. So briefcase, best use of resources and time. I mean, it really, I made this at Pink Sparrow. It's a fabrication house around the corner from my office, and those guys helped me make it. And shout to Pink Sparrow. They did this in exchange for honey. So
get out of here.
It was a great deal for me, and it's just a fun thing to carry. It's quite heavy though.
That's like what you were talking about, coming full circle. How honey has been the gift of humanity since the beginning of time, and that's proof right there. That's really dope.
Bartering is real.
I love it. So first of all, thank you so much for giving us your time and telling us your story. I think your story is incredible, and more hip-hop outlets should have Mike on to tell this story, because this is easily the most hip-hop product on the market without question. like there's no argument about it. So if you hear me Sway, if you hear me everybody else, have this man on your show to tell the story because it's very important. Is there anything else you want to let the people know before we get out of here?
Yeah, you can follow us online on all platforms at Mike's Hot Honey. You can find us in the honey aisle of your local supermarket or on Amazon or mikeshothoney.com. And if you're on the West Coast, check us out, our West Coast tour. LA at Les Sordids, 3 to 8 p.m. on the 22nd of March, and 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. at the Stowaway, downtown LA, both on the 22nd of March. The 23rd of March, the evening at Tribute Pizza in San Diego, and on the 24th, Aruba in Tijuana.
Let's go.
If you're out in any of those cities, come check us out.
Pull up. You heard it from the man himself. Mike, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Harold, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your South by.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You
We
too.
out of here.